Along a quiet stretch of rural road near Silver Pines, Washington, the early morning mist clung low to the rolling hills, softening the edges of the dense pine forest that framed the horizon. Jake Mercer, a Navy SEAL home on leave, was in his element, his steady cadence breaking the stillness as he jogged along the gravel shoulder. The air was crisp and carried the faint scent of damp earth and pine needles, a sharp contrast to the salt air he was used to aboard ships. His mind was focused, the rhythmic pounding of his boots against the ground, a familiar meditation after months of deployment. As Jake rounded a bend where the trees gave way to a small clearing, a faint, uneven sound caught his attention. A child's sobs, fragile and distant, but unmistakable amid the morning quiet. He slowed, scanning the roadside, his instincts kicking in with the urgency bred from years of training. There, just beyond a clump of ferns, sat a young girl no older than 7 or 8, her small frame hunched and trembling. Her cheeks were streaked with tears, and her wide, frightened eyes darted nervously towards the empty road behind her. Before we continue, make sure to like and subscribe to never miss a new video. And tell me, where are you watching this video from? I love seeing all different people come together for these stories. Beside her lay a shaggy black and tan dog, its ears perked and body tense, alert to every movement. The dog's presence was both a comfort and a warning, loyal and protective, yet wary of strangers. Jake's military training taught him to read such signals carefully, and he approached slowly, hands relaxed and visible, his voice calm and steady. "Hey there, I'm Jake. What's your name?" he said softly, crouching to be less intimidating. The girl flinched but didn't run. Instead, she clutched the dog's collar tightly, as if drawing strength from her companion. "Emma," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the gentle rustling of the pine needles and the distant call of a morning bird. Jake nodded, offering a reassuring smile. "Emma, what are you doing out here all alone?" She swallowed hard, her eyes filling again with tears. "I don't know. I was with my family, but then I got lost," she stammered, her fingers tightening around the dog's fur. Max, the dog, shifted position, his gaze locking onto Jake with a protective intensity. He growled low in his throat, a subtle warning that Jake took seriously. He paused, then reached slowly into his jacket pocket, pulling out a granola bar and extending it toward Max. The dog hesitated, then sniffed cautiously before accepting the offering, his tail giving a tentative wag. Jake's heart tightened at the sight of this small, frightened girl and her loyal dog, stranded on a lonely road with no clear way home. He glanced around, noting the absence of passing cars and the dense woods that hemmed the clearing, their shadows stretching long in the early light. His mind raced through possibilities. How long had Emma been alone? Was she safe from whatever had separated her from her family? Emma's voice broke through his thoughts again, shaky and uncertain. "Max wouldn't let me go anywhere. He says there's something bad nearby." Jake's brows furrowed. "What do you mean, something bad?" Before Emma could answer, Max suddenly stiffened, his nose twitching as he sniffed the air. He pulled on his collar, urging Jake to follow him toward a nearby thicket where the underbrush grew thick and tangled. The dog's urgency was clear, and despite the unease settling in his gut, Jake followed, his footsteps muffled by the soft carpet of pine needles. As they moved deeper into the woods, the sounds of the road faded, replaced by the quiet rustle of leaves and the occasional snap of a twig underfoot. Emma stayed close to Max, her small hand gripping his collar tightly. Jake's military training sharpened his senses. Every shadow, every rustle could signal danger. Yet the girl's trust in the dog and in him was palpable, a fragile thread holding them together in the uncertainty. "Can you tell me what happened, Emma? How did you get separated from your family?" Jake asked gently, matching his pace to hers. Emma bit her lip, eyes flickering with fear and confusion. "We were hiking. I was picking flowers. And then I heard a noise, something loud. Mom told me to stay close, but when I looked up, everyone was gone." Jake's jaw tightened. The story was disjointed, but chilling. A child lost in the wilderness is vulnerable, and the mention of a loud noise hinted at something more alarming than a simple misstep on a trail. Max stopped abruptly near a cluster of broken branches, and a torn piece of fabric caught on a thorny bush. Jake knelt down, examining the ragged edge. "Looks like someone might have been here recently," he muttered, pocketing the fabric carefully for later. Emma peered over his shoulder, her eyes wide. "That's my jacket. I lost it when I was running." The dog growled softly again, and Jake noticed the fur along Max's back bristle. The protective canine was sensing something Jake hadn't yet spotted. He scanned the dense undergrowth, the shadows deepening as the sun climbed higher, casting uneven pools of light across the forest floor. The unease creeping into Jake's chest was familiar, the feeling that danger lurked just beyond the visible. "We're going to find your family, Emma. I promise," Jake said firmly, locking eyes with her to instill confidence. "But first, we need to figure out where you are and what might have happened." Emma nodded, clutching Max's collar tighter. The dog's calm presence was her anchor, and Jake knew that trust between them was their greatest strength right now. He took out his phone and tried to get a signal, but the screen displayed the dreaded "no service" message. The remote location of the road and the thick canopy overhead made communication difficult. Jake's training kicked in again. He couldn't rely on backup arriving quickly. He was on his own, and the responsibility to keep Emma safe rested squarely on his shoulders. Max barked sharply, pulling Jake's attention back to the woods. The dog was leading them toward a narrow path, barely visible beneath the underbrush. Jake exchanged a glance with Emma, who nodded, her determination renewed. Together, they stepped cautiously into the shadowed trail, the quiet sobs of the forest mingling with the distant hum of the waking day. The journey ahead was uncertain, but Jake's resolve was clear. In this quiet corner of Silver Pines, a Navy SEAL and a lost girl with her loyal dog had crossed paths, bound by fate and the unspoken promise of protection. The forest around Silver Pines held a quiet majesty, its tall pines stretching toward the sky like silent sentinels guarding ancient secrets. The air was thick with the scent of moss and damp earth, filtered sunlight casting mottled patterns across the forest floor. Amid this serene wilderness, the bond between Emma and her dog Max was a vivid thread of warmth and loyalty. The girl's small hand rested firmly on Max's collar as they moved deeper into the woods, a silent pact of trust and protection. Jake Mercer followed closely behind, his trained eyes scanning the surroundings for any sign of danger. Despite the peacefulness of the landscape, his instincts warned him that something was amiss. The remote trail they navigated was narrow and overgrown, winding through thick underbrush and fallen leaves. Every step stirred the quiet life of the forest, a chorus of rustling branches, distant bird calls, and the soft padding of Max's paws. Emma's breathing was shallow but steady, her gaze flickering between the path ahead and Max's vigilant posture. The dog's ears twitched constantly, alert to sounds Jake couldn't yet discern. The bond between them was unmistakable, a silent communication built on years of companionship. Max's protective nature was instinctive. He moved with a quiet confidence, always positioning himself between Emma and any potential threat. Jake approached cautiously, lowering his voice to avoid alarming Emma or Max. "Emma, can you tell me more about Max? How long have you had him?" The girl's eyes softened at the mention of her dog. "Since I was little. He's my best friend. He always knows when something's wrong." Jake nodded, understanding that Max was more than just a pet. He was a guardian, a source of comfort in an uncertain world. "Good boy, Max," he murmured, offering the dog a reassuring smile. Max responded with a gentle wag of his tail, but remained alert, his eyes scanning the shadows. As they continued along the trail, Jake noticed Emma's hesitance. Her small footsteps faltered, and she glanced nervously toward a cluster of dense bushes beside the path. "I don't like it here," she whispered. "Max says we should be careful." Jake crouched beside her, meeting her gaze with calm assurance. "You're doing great, Emma. Max is smart and we'll stick together. Nothing's going to happen to you." Emma nodded, drawing strength from Jake's steady presence and Max's unwavering vigilance. The trio pressed on, the forest growing thicker and the light dimmer beneath the canopy. Jake's senses were on high alert. The broken branches and disturbed earth they had seen earlier hinted at recent activity, and he remained watchful for any signs of trouble. Suddenly, Max's ears perked sharply, and he let out a low growl. Jake froze, scanning the underbrush. From the shadows emerged a small figure, a deer startled by their presence, bounding away with swift grace. Max relaxed, his growl fading into a soft whine as he turned back to Emma. "See? Just a deer," Jake said softly, exhaling the tension he hadn't realized he was holding. Emma smiled faintly, her grip on Max's collar loosening just a fraction. The peaceful moment was brief. As Jake glanced around, he spotted a faint trail leading off the main path, a narrow, barely visible track winding deeper into the woods. Max's nose twitched, and he tugged gently on his collar, urging Jake and Emma to follow. The dog's instincts were sharp, and Jake trusted his judgment implicitly. The trio veered onto the side trail, the undergrowth closing in tighter around them. Emma's footsteps slowed again, but she didn't resist Max's pull. Jake's military training guided him forward with caution, his eyes scanning for any sign that might explain the girl's distress. After a few minutes, they emerged into a small clearing bathed in dappled sunlight. The air was cooler here, carrying the faint scent of smoke and something metallic, an odd contrast to the natural surroundings. Emma's eyes widened as she took in the scene. "That's where I heard the noise," she said quietly, pointing toward a cluster of fallen logs and scattered debris. It was loud, like someone shouting. Jake knelt beside a broken branch, examining scratch marks and disturbed soil. "Looks like a struggle," he muttered. He glanced at Emma, who nodded solemnly, her small face set with determination. Max stayed close, his body tense but protective. He sniffed the air again, then led Jake's attention to a patch of flattened grass near the edge of the clearing. Something had been dragged through here recently. Jake's heart quickened. The evidence was mounting. Emma's story was more than just a lost child's imagination. "We need to keep moving," Jake said firmly. "If someone's in trouble, we have to find them before it gets worse." Emma's eyes filled with tears, but she held Max's collar tightly, drawing courage from her loyal companion. Jake reached out, gently brushing a stray lock of hair from her face. "You're very brave, Emma. Max and I are going to get you and your family out of this." As they prepared to leave the clearing, Jake took one last look around. The forest seemed to hold its breath, shadows deepening as the day progressed. The sense of quiet watchfulness was almost tangible, as if unseen eyes observed their every move. Max barked softly, pulling Jake and Emma toward the narrow trail once more. The dog's instincts were guiding them deeper into the mystery, and Jake's resolve hardened. Whatever danger lurked in these woods, he would face it head-on to protect this frightened girl and her faithful dog. Together, they stepped back onto the path, the forest closing behind them like a silent guardian. The journey ahead was uncertain, but in that moment, the bond between Emma and Max shone like a beacon, an unbreakable promise of loyalty and hope amidst the shadowed wilderness. The dense thicket swallowed Jake, Emma, and Max as they pushed deeper into the underbrush, the canopy above thickening and dimming the afternoon sun. The forest floor was littered with fallen pine needles and broken branches, each step muffled by the soft earth beneath. The air grew cooler and heavier, carrying the faint metallic scent Jake had noticed earlier. Every instinct sharpened in his chest. This was no ordinary hike gone wrong. Max led the way, nose to the ground, pulling gently but insistently on his collar. Emma stayed close, her small hands clutching the dog's fur, her eyes wide and alert. Jake's gaze flickered over the terrain, his military training guiding his steps and senses. He scanned for anything out of place, anything that might explain the girl's terrified whispers and the dog's anxious behavior. Suddenly, Max halted, his body rigid, his ears pricked forward as he sniffed the air intensely. Jake crouched down, his hand moving to the small knife strapped to his belt, ready for whatever might lie ahead. Then, just beyond a thick bramble, something caught his eye. A torn piece of fabric, snagged on a jagged branch. It fluttered slightly in the breeze, the edges frayed and stained. Jake reached out carefully, retrieving the fabric. It was lightweight, patterned in a way that suggested it belonged to a child's jacket or shirt. He held it up, the fading sunlight revealing a small smudge of dirt and a faint streak of something darker, perhaps dried blood. Emma's voice trembled as she whispered, "That's mine. I ripped it when I ran." Jake's heart tightened. The realization settled like a weight. Whatever had scared her, whatever had caused her to flee and become lost, had been close enough to leave traces behind. This was no simple accident. There had been a struggle. He folded the fabric carefully and tucked it into his jacket pocket. "Emma, you're doing really well. Can you tell me more about what happened after you got separated?" She swallowed hard, her eyes filling with tears, but her voice steady. "I was scared. I heard yelling and footsteps running. Max wouldn't let me move away, so I stayed put. But then I saw a man. He was angry and shouting. I didn't know what to do." Jake's mind raced, piecing together the fragments. A frightened child, a protective dog, a man shouting, possibly threatening. The details were sparse, but the danger was clear. He pulled out his phone, fingers fumbling as he tried to get a signal. The screen stubbornly displayed no service. The remote woods, the thick canopy, and the rugged terrain were conspiring against him. Jake's frustration was tempered by resolve. He couldn't wait for help to come to him. He had to act. Max growled low, pulling Jake's attention back to the path ahead. The dog's behavior was tense, but controlled, signaling that the threat was near, but perhaps not immediate. Jake nodded to Emma, giving her a reassuring smile. "We're going to keep looking, but we have to be careful. Stay close to Max and me." They moved cautiously, the underbrush growing thicker and the forest darker. Jake's military instincts took over. Every shadow, every sound was analyzed. The faint scuff of disturbed earth, the broken twigs, the subtle impressions in the dirt. They all told a story of hurried movement, of someone being dragged or running through this very spot. Emma's small voice broke the silence. I think someone else is here. I can hear breathing. Jake paused, his breath steady despite the tension rising in his chest. He motioned for Emma to stay behind him as Max sniffed the air, nose twitching. The dog's ears flattened briefly, then perked up as he led them toward a narrow, almost hidden trail winding deeper into the woods. The path was treacherous, tangled with roots and snags, but Max moved with sure-footed grace. Emma followed, her trust in the dog unwavering despite the fear shadowing her eyes. Jake's focus remained razor-sharp, muscles coiled and ready. After several tense minutes, they came upon a small clearing. The sunlight filtering through the canopy was dim, casting long shadows over an abandoned campsite. Scattered belongings lay half buried in the dirt, a torn backpack, a cracked water bottle, and a few pieces of clothing. The area was silent, but the signs of recent activity were unmistakable. Jake knelt down, examining the site with a practiced eye. The ground was disturbed, as if someone had been dragged or had struggled here. Nearby, a makeshift fire pit was cold, the ashes damp with recent rain. The atmosphere was heavy, charged with the residue of fear and desperation. Emma clung tightly to Max, her voice barely above a whisper. That's where I think they took him. The man I heard yelling. Jake's jaw tightened. The pieces were falling into place. A kidnapping. Someone held captive, possibly nearby. He pulled out his phone again, trying once more for a signal. Still nothing. Frustration gnawed at him, but he swallowed it down. There was no time to waste. We need to find a better spot to call for help, Jake said firmly. Can you keep moving with Max and me, Emma? We'll find a safe place. Emma nodded, wiping tears from her cheeks, her small hand steady on Max's collar. The dog growled softly, sensing the urgency. Jake led them away from the clearing, back onto the narrow trail. The forest closed in tighter, the shadows lengthening as the sun dipped lower. Every step was measured, every sound analyzed. The feeling of unseen eyes watching them persisted, but Jake pressed forward, driven by the need to rescue whoever was being held captive. The path twisted and turned, leading them toward a denser part of the woods. Max's growls became more frequent, his body tense with anticipation. Emma stayed close, her trust in Jake and Max unwavering despite the growing fear. Then, just ahead, a faint noise reached Jake's ears, a muffled cry, barely audible but unmistakable. He froze, signaling for Emma to be quiet. Max barked softly, then led the way toward the source. The underbrush parted to reveal a concealed entrance to what looked like an underground bunker hidden beneath a carpet of leaves and branches. The entrance was small and partially camouflaged, a heavy metal hatch rusted but intact. Jake's heart pounded. The evidence was undeniable now. A captive, trapped beneath the forest floor. He crouched beside Emma, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. Stay here with Max, he whispered. I'm going to see what's inside. The girl nodded, eyes wide but trusting. Max growled low, positioning himself protectively between Jake and the hatch. Jake lifted the heavy lid with a grunt, revealing a dark, narrow stairwell descending into the earth. The air that escaped was damp and cold, carrying faint sounds of muffled breathing and weak coughing. He switched on his flashlight, the beam cutting through the darkness. Below, a man lay restrained, weak and bruised, but alive. Relief washed over Jake, tempered by urgency. Hang on, Jake murmured, pulling out his radio and calling for emergency services, his voice steady despite the tension. We found a captive. Request immediate backup at my location. Emma's small voice echoed from above, steady despite the fear. "We're going to get him out, aren't we?" Jake looked up, meeting her eyes. "Yes, Emma. We're going to get him out." Max let out a soft bark, his protective stance unwavering, as Jake prepared to bring the man to safety. The forest seemed to hold its breath as Jake, Emma, and Max stepped cautiously beyond the concealed entrance. The narrow trail they followed wound deeper into the woods, the trees closing in like silent sentinels, their branches weaving a shadowed canopy overhead. The faint cries they'd heard earlier lingered in Jake's mind, mingling with the rustle of leaves and the distant call of a lone crow. Max's alert posture never wavered. The dog's keen senses, honed by years of loyalty and vigilance, guided them through the dense undergrowth. His nose twitched constantly, sniffing the damp earth and cool air, leading Jake and Emma with quiet determination. Emma's grip on Max's collar was firm, her small fingers trembling but resolute. The bond between the girl and her dog was palpable, a lifeline amid the encroaching uncertainty. Jake's military training kicked into high gear as they navigated the uneven terrain. His eyes scanned every shadow, every movement, every subtle change in the forest's rhythm. He moved deliberately, but swiftly, muscles coiled and ready, senses attuned to the slightest hint of danger. The weight of responsibility pressed on him, but his resolve hardened with each step. "Stay close, Emma," Jake whispered, his voice low and steady. "Max and I will keep you safe." Emma nodded, her wide eyes reflecting a mixture of fear and trust. She tightened her hold on Max's collar, drawing strength from the dog's calm confidence. The narrow path curved sharply, leading them toward a faintly visible trail marker, partially obscured by moss and vines. Jake paused to examine it. A weathered wooden post with a faded symbol, perhaps left by hikers or locals. The presence of the markers suggested they were nearing a more traveled area, but the growing shadows and eerie silence told a different story. Suddenly, Max stopped, ears pricked forward, and let out a low, urgent bark. Jake froze, scanning the dense foliage ahead. The dog's body was rigid, muscles tensed like a coiled spring. Emma instinctively stepped closer, her breath catching. From the underbrush emerged a figure, a wiry man, his face partially obscured by a hood, eyes sharp and wary. He halted a few feet away, hands raised in a gesture of peace, but his posture defensive. Jake's hand instinctively moved toward his belt, but he held back, reading the man's intent. "Easy," the man said in a rough voice, eyes flicking between Emma and Max. "I'm not here to hurt anyone." Jake studied the stranger carefully. "Who are you? Are you the one holding the man in the bunker?" The man's gaze darkened. "No, I'm just passing through. Heard the commotion, thought I'd check it out." His eyes lingered on Emma, then shifted to Max, who growled softly but didn't advance. Jake didn't lower his guard. "There's someone trapped nearby. We need help." The man hesitated, then nodded. "I know a better way out of these woods. I can lead you to a spot with a phone signal." Jake exchanged a glance with Emma, who looked hesitant but nodded. The man's knowledge could be invaluable. "Lead the way." They followed the stranger's lead, the forest gradually thinning as they emerged onto a faint dirt road. The canopy lifted, allowing shafts of sunlight to pierce the gloom. The air felt lighter, but Jake's vigilance remained. The man pointed to a cluster of rocks beside the road. "There's usually a signal here." Jake pulled out his phone, fingers working quickly. The screen flickered, then displayed "no service" again. Frustration tightened his jaw, but he refused to give up. "Let's keep moving," he said, scanning the horizon. There's a ranger station a few miles down. We can try there." Emma's small voice broke the silence. "Will someone come for the man in the bunker?" Jake nodded firmly. "Yes, I've called for backup. They're on their way." Max barked softly, as if reassuring Emma, who smiled faintly despite the lingering fear. As they set off down the road, Jake's mind raced. The stranger's presence was a variable he couldn't ignore. But for now, the priority was clear: get Emma to safety and ensure help reach the captive. The forest whispered around them, secrets hidden beneath its ancient boughs. But Jake Mercer was determined to uncover them all, one step at a time. The sun dipped lower behind the trees, casting long shadows over the rugged clearing where Jake had stopped to catch his breath. The abandoned campsite lay scattered with signs of hurried departure: a half-burned log, a torn backpack, and discarded belongings that hinted at a struggle. The silence hung heavy, broken only by the soft rustle of leaves and the distant call of a crow. Jake knelt beside the scattered items, examining each with the practiced eye of a soldier, trained to read the smallest detail. A broken water bottle lay near a patch of damp earth, footprints partially obscured by fresh pine needles. He could sense the urgency lingering in the air, a silent testament to the fear and desperation that had passed through this spot. Emma clung tightly to Max's collar, her wide eyes scanning the forest edge as if expecting danger to emerge from the shadows. The dog stood alert, muscles taut, a low growl vibrating in his throat, a warning Jake took seriously. "We're close," Jake said softly, his voice steady despite the tension knotting in his chest. "Someone was here recently, and I believe they're in trouble." Emma's lips quivered, but she nodded, her trust in Jake unwavering. "I want to help," she whispered. Jake reached out, resting a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "You already have, Emma. You and Max led me here." He pulled out his radio, pressing the button with a practiced thumb. "This is Mercer. I'm at the coordinates of the abandoned campsite near Silver Pines. Signs of a struggle. Possible victim nearby. Requesting immediate backup and medical assistance." Static hissed in response, but the message was sent. Jake glanced at his phone again, still no signal. The dense forest and rugged terrain made communication difficult, but he refused to wait for help that might take too long. "Stay close and stay quiet," Jake instructed, motioning for Emma and Max to follow. The trio moved cautiously through the clearing, following a faint trail that led toward a denser thicket. The undergrowth thickened, branches scraping their faces and snagging clothing. But Jake's resolve only grew stronger. Max's growls became more frequent, his nose twitching as he led them along a barely visible path. The dog's instincts were sharp, alerting Jake to every subtle shift in the environment. Emma's small hand never left Max's collar, her trust in her companion a steady anchor amid the growing tension. After several minutes, the trail opened into a small clearing dominated by a concealed underground entrance. A rusted metal hatch partly hidden beneath leaves and branches. The air was cooler here, carrying a faint metallic scent that tugged at Jake's senses. "This must be it," Jake murmured, kneeling beside the hatch. He brushed away debris and checked the lock mechanism. It was old but functional, the rust softened by years of neglect. Emma watched anxiously, her breath shallow. "Is someone inside?" Jake nodded solemnly. "Yes, we need to get them out before it gets worse." He reached for his knife, using the blade to pry the hatch open. It groaned softly as it shifted, revealing a narrow stairwell descending into darkness. A damp, cold draft rose from below, carrying faint sounds, muffled breathing, weak coughing. Jake flicked on his flashlight, the beam cutting through the gloom. At the bottom of the stairs, a man lay restrained, bruised and pale but alive. Relief and urgency surged through Jake's veins. "Hang on, sir. We're here to get you out," Jake said firmly. He scanned the room for hazards, then moved to remove the man's restraints. Emma stood at the top of the stairs, clutching Max, her eyes wide but hopeful. Max let out a low bark, his protective stance unwavering. Jake supported the man's weight as he helped him ascend the stairs. The man winced, but managed a grateful nod. Outside, Jake radioed in again, his voice steady despite the tension. Victim located and being extracted, requesting immediate medical evacuation and law enforcement support. Emma's small voice broke through the quiet. "Is he going to be okay?" Jake glanced down at the man, who gave a faint thumbs up. "Yes, thanks to you and Max. You both did something very brave." The man's eyes flickered with gratitude as Jake helped him to a sitting position. The forest around them was still, but Jake knew the calm was temporary. The danger that had brought them here was far from over. He looked toward the path, scanning for signs of movement, ready to protect Emma and Max at a moment's notice. The weight of responsibility pressed heavily, but Jake's determination was unwavering. "We're not safe yet," he said quietly, "but help is on the way." Guided by Max's unwavering instincts, Jake carefully led Emma through the thickening forest, their footsteps muffled by the soft carpet of pine needles and fallen leaves. The dog moved confidently ahead, nose close to the ground, occasionally pausing to sniff the air and glance back, ensuring Emma and Jake followed. The dense canopy above filtered the fading sunlight into dappled patterns, casting long shadows that danced as the wind whispered through the towering pines. Emma clung tightly to Max's collar, her small hands trembling slightly. But her trust in the dog and Jake gave her a fragile sense of security. Jake's military training kept him alert to every sound and movement in the woods. Muscles coiled, senses sharpened. The muffled sounds they had heard earlier, soft breathing and weak coughing, were now faint but persistent, drawing them forward. After what felt like an eternity navigating the dense underbrush, Max stopped abruptly, ears pricked and tail stiff. Before them lay a concealed entrance, nearly camouflaged by a thick layer of fallen leaves and pine branches. The metal hatch was old and rusted, blending seamlessly with the forest floor. Jake knelt, brushing aside the debris to reveal a heavy lid with a simple locking mechanism. Emma's voice was barely a whisper. "Is that where the man is?" Jake nodded, his eyes scanning the perimeter for any signs of threat. "Yes. We need to get him out, but carefully." He reached into his jacket pocket, pulling out a small multi-tool. With practiced hands, he began working the lock, the metal creaking quietly as the mechanism resisted the years of neglect. Max remained vigilant, growling softly, his eyes fixed on the surrounding woods. Finally, the hatch gave way, revealing a narrow stairwell descending into darkness. A cold, damp draft rose from below, carrying the faint, ragged breaths of the captive. Jake switched on his flashlight, the beam piercing the gloom. The wooden steps creaked underfoot as he descended slowly, every sense alert. At the bottom, the faint light revealed a man, slumped against the wall, his clothes torn and stained, face pale but eyes flickering with life. He was bound with crude restraints, his wrists and ankles shackled to metal fixtures embedded in the wall. Despite his weakened state, there was a spark of relief as he looked up at Jake. "Help me," the man rasped, voice hoarse but urgent. Jake moved swiftly, pulling out a compact blade from his belt to cut through the restraints. The man winced but didn't resist, too exhausted to struggle. As the last shackle fell away, Jake supported the man's weight, helping him to sit upright. "Who did this to you?" Jake asked gently, scanning the room for any hidden dangers. The man's eyes darkened with fear. "A gang. They've been trafficking people through these woods, using this place as a hideout." Jake's jaw tightened. The scope of the situation was grimmer than he had imagined. "Stay calm," Jake said firmly. "I'm calling for help." He pulled out his radio, pressing the button. "This is Mercer. Victim found in underground. Bunker near Silver Pines. Request immediate extraction and law enforcement assistance. Suspected criminal activity in the area." Static hissed in response. But Jake's message was out. He then looked up toward the stairwell. "Emma, Max, I'm going to bring him up now. Stay close and be ready." Emma nodded, determination flickering in her eyes. Max growled softly, positioning himself protectively as Jake gently helped the man ascend the stairs. The confined space made the ascent slow and careful, but they reached the surface without incident. As daylight filtered into the bunker entrance, the man took a deep breath, grateful for the fresh air. Emma stepped forward, her small voice filled with concern. "Are you going to be okay?" The man managed a weak smile. "Thanks to you and Max, I think I will." Jake scanned the surrounding woods, alert for any signs of pursuit. The forest was eerily silent, the usual sounds of wildlife subdued, as if the trees themselves were holding their breath. "Help is on the way," Jake assured them, "but we're not out of danger yet." Max barked softly, standing close to Emma as if to shield her from the unknown threats lurking beyond the clearing. Jake helped the man to his feet, supporting him as they moved toward a safer area where they could wait for backup. Emma stayed close, her hands never leaving Max's collar. The bond between the girl and her dog remained the steadfast heart of this fragile rescue. As they settled near the edge of the clearing, Jake's mind raced with the implications of what they had uncovered. The underground bunker was only one piece of a larger, more sinister network operating in the shadows of Silver Pines. But for now, their priority was clear: protect Emma, ensure the man's safety, and hold their ground until help arrived. The forest around them whispered with secrets, but Jake Mercer, Emma, and Max stood ready to face whatever darkness lay ahead. The distant wail of sirens cut through the stillness of the Silver Pines forest, a stark contrast to the quiet that had hung over the clearing just moments before. Jake stood protectively between Emma and the rescued man, his gaze sweeping the shadowed tree line as flashing lights penetrated the dense canopy. The arrival of the authorities was a relief, but also a reminder that the danger was far from over. Uniformed officers and paramedics moved swiftly, securing the perimeter and setting up a temporary command post near the edge of the woods. A female detective, sharp-eyed and efficient, approached Jake, clipboard in hand. "Mercer, I'm Detective Laura Chen. We received your call about the captive." Jake nodded, his posture tense but professional. "Yes. Found him in an underground bunker. He's weak but stable. We need to move quickly. The area might still be compromised." Detective Chen glanced toward Emma, who clung to Max's collar, her small frame trembling but resolute. "Is this the girl you mentioned?" Jake gave a brief nod. "Emma led me here. Her dog Max was instrumental in tracking the location." Chen's eyes softened as she crouched to Emma's level. "You were very brave, Emma. Thanks to you and Max, a man's life was saved." Emma's eyes shone with a mix of pride and exhaustion. Max wagged his tail slowly, sensing the calm but remaining alert. Paramedics tended to the rescued man, carefully loading him onto a stretcher. Jake overheard snippets of his story. Kidnapped by a criminal gang operating in the area, held captive while plans for trafficking victims were orchestrated. The man's voice was hoarse, but determined as he recounted his ordeal. Detective Chen turned to Jake. "We've mobilized a task force to investigate the gang's activities. Your information is crucial." Jake nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility but also a surge of relief. "I'll stay involved. Emma and her family need protection." Chen glanced at Emma again. "We'll make sure she's safe. And Max here is a hero." The community's response was swift and supportive. News crews arrived, capturing footage of the rescue and the ongoing investigation. Emma's story, along with Max's role, inspired local efforts to raise awareness about missing persons and human trafficking. Jake found himself thrust into a new mission, coordinating with federal agents, sharing insights from his military experience, and helping to dismantle the criminal network. The investigation uncovered a web of illicit operations extending beyond Silver Pines, confirming the gang's reach and danger. Emma and her family began the slow process of healing, supported by counselors and the tight-knit community. Jake made frequent visits, offering reassurance and a steadfast presence. Max, now a local hero dog, became a symbol of hope and resilience. One afternoon, as Jake sat with Emma and her parents in their cozy living room, the air was lighter, filled with cautious optimism. Emma's parents expressed gratitude, their eyes reflecting the profound impact of Jake's intervention. Jake smiled, his gaze drifting to Max, who lay contentedly at Emma's feet. "This is just the beginning," he said softly. "But together, we'll make sure this never happens again." Emma looked up, determination shining in her eyes. "And Max will always be here to help." Outside, the sun cast a warm glow over Silver Pines, a town beginning to heal from the shadows that had once threatened its peace. The bond between a brave girl, her loyal dog, and a determined Navy SEAL had sparked a movement, one of courage, community, and unwavering hope. The sterile hum of fluorescent lights filled the makeshift command center set up in the Silver Pines Community Hall, where federal agents had converged to dismantle the criminal network operating within the region. Maps and photographs plastered the walls, each marked with lines and pins charting the gang's movements, suspected hideouts, and trafficking routes. Jake Mercer stood at the center of the room, his military bearing commanding quiet attention as he coordinated with Special Agent Isabella Rossi and her team. Isabella's sharp eyes met Jake's as she briefed the assembled officers. "Based on the intelligence gathered, this gang has a sprawling network extending beyond Silver Pines and into neighboring counties. Their operations are sophisticated, but with Jake's insights and the evidence collected, we have a solid lead." Jake nodded, recalling the details from Emma's rescue and the abandoned bunker. Their use of secluded forest locations gives them a tactical advantage, but it also isolates their victims. We need to move quickly before they relocate. The agents worked in tandem, coordinating surveillance, gathering warrants, and planning a series of coordinated raids. Jake's experience as a Navy SEAL proved invaluable. His knowledge of terrain, reconnaissance, and tactical entry informed the strategies that would soon unfold. Meanwhile, in Silver Pines, the community rallied around Emma and her family. Support groups, counselors, and local volunteers organized efforts to provide healing and security for victims of the gang's activities. Emma's story became a beacon of hope, inspiring neighbors to be vigilant and proactive. Jake made frequent visits to Emma's home, where the girl's resilience shone through despite the trauma. Max, ever faithful, remained a comforting presence at her side. During one visit, Emma looked up at Jake with a determined expression. "Will they catch the bad people?" Jake smiled reassuringly. "We're doing everything we can. You helped us get this far." Back at the command center, the planned raids commenced under the cover of darkness. Teams moved swiftly through the forested outskirts, clearing safe houses, freeing captives, and apprehending suspects. The operation was meticulous. No room for error. Jake led a small unit assigned to secure one of the gang's main compounds, a secluded cabin deep in the woods. The tension was palpable as they approached, every sense heightened. With practiced precision, Jake signaled his team, and they breached the structure, clearing rooms and securing evidence. Inside, they found victims huddled in fear, their relief palpable as they were freed. The gang members were arrested without resistance, the network unraveling under the weight of law enforcement's coordinated strike. News of the successful operation spread quickly, bringing a sense of justice and closure to Silver Pines. Community leaders praised the efforts, highlighting the crucial role Jake and Emma's bravery had played in exposing the criminal enterprise. As dawn broke over the town, Jake stood with Special Agent Rossi, watching the sunrise paint the sky in hues of pink and gold. The battle was far from over, but the decisive blows struck that night marked a turning point. "We've disrupted their operations significantly," Isabella said, her tone measured but hopeful. "With continued vigilance, we can prevent a resurgence." Jake nodded, his gaze steady. "It's about more than just arrests. We need to rebuild trust and ensure safety for everyone here." In the days that followed, Silver Pines began to heal. Community watch programs were established, educational campaigns launched, and support networks strengthened. Emma's story continued to inspire, a testament to courage in the face of darkness. Max became a local hero, his image featured in newspapers and community events. The bond between the girl and her dog symbolized resilience and hope, a reminder that even in the darkest woods, light could be found. Jake remained a steadfast presence, volunteering his time to mentor youth and support safety initiatives. His military discipline blended seamlessly with his commitment to community, forging a new path forward. As the town embraced a renewed sense of security, the lessons learned from the ordeal echoed in every corner of Silver Pines. Vigilance, compassion, and the unbreakable strength found in standing together against evil. Under the overcast sky of Silver Pines, a convoy of law enforcement vehicles rolled quietly through the winding forest roads, their headlights piercing the morning mist. Jake Mercer sat in the front seat of an unmarked SUV, his eyes fixed on the dense tree line ahead. Beside him, Special Agent Isabella Rossi reviewed the operation's final details on a tablet, her expression focused and resolute. The moment they had prepared for was finally here. A coordinated raid designed to dismantle the remnants of the trafficking gang that had terrorized their town. The plan was meticulous. Simultaneous strikes on multiple locations to prevent any suspects from escaping or warning others. Jake's unit was assigned to a secluded cabin deep in the woods, a known hub for the gang's operations. The cabin's isolation provided a tactical advantage for the criminals, but also made it vulnerable to a swift, decisive assault. As they neared the target, Jake's military training took over. He checked his gear, signaling his team to prepare for entry. The forest around them was eerily silent, as if nature itself awaited the unfolding confrontation. Emma's story had been the catalyst for this operation, and the weight of responsibility pressed heavily on Jake's shoulders. With a nod from the team leader, they dismounted and moved swiftly through the underbrush, keeping low and silent. Jake's heart pounded in rhythm with his footsteps, muscles tense and ready. The cabin came into view, weathered and camouflaged. It blended almost seamlessly with the surrounding trees. Jake signaled, and the team approached the cabin's door. With a practiced kick, it burst open, and they flooded inside. The surprise was complete. The gang members inside were caught, off guard. Shouts and commands echoed as officers secured the area, rounding up suspects and guiding frightened captives to safety. Inside one of the rooms, Jake found several individuals huddled together, their eyes wide with fear and relief. Among them was a young woman, trembling but unharmed. Relief washed over Jake as he knelt beside her. "You're safe now," he assured quietly. The suspects offered no resistance, their faces etched with defeat as officers read them their rights. Evidence seized from the cabin included documents, phones, and other materials critical to unraveling the gang's network. Back outside, news crews had gathered near the perimeter, capturing footage of the arrests and the freed victims. The community's response was immediate. Hope mingled with a somber recognition of the darkness that had lurked so close. Emma's story, intertwined with Jake's courage and Max's loyalty, had sparked a movement. Local leaders organized awareness campaigns and support groups determined to prevent such horrors from recurring. Max, now a beloved figure in the town, received a hero's welcome at community events, his calm demeanor and protective instincts inspiring all who met him. Jake stood beside Emma and her family during a town hall meeting, the room filled with neighbors and officials committed to healing and vigilance. Emma's parents expressed heartfelt gratitude, their voices trembling with emotion as they recounted the ordeal and the hope brought by Jake's intervention. Jake spoke quietly but firmly. True safety comes from community, watching out for one another and standing up against injustice. Emma's bravery reminded us all of that. As the meeting concluded, Emma looked up at Jake, determination shining in her eyes. "And Max will always be here to help." Outside, the sun broke through the clouds, casting a warm glow over Silver Pines. The town, scarred but resilient, began to rebuild. The bonds forged in adversity promised a future where courage, trust, and unity would prevail. Jake watched as Max trotted happily alongside Emma, the unbreakable bond between girl and dog a living testament to hope. Their story was not just one of rescue, but of enduring strength, a beacon guiding Silver Pines toward a safer tomorrow. The morning sun cast a gentle glow over Silver Pines, its light weaving through the tall pines that bordered the quiet neighborhood where Emma and her family had returned to their peaceful life. The air was crisp and filled with the soft hum of birdsong, a stark contrast to the tension and fear that had once gripped the town. In the backyard, Emma played with Max, her loyal dog, their laughter and joyful barks echoing across the lawn, a sound that had become a symbol of hope and resilience for the entire community. Jake Mercer stood on the porch, watching the scene with a quiet smile. The Navy SEAL had become more than a rescuer. He was now a steadfast friend and mentor. His time in Silver Pines had evolved from a chance encounter during a morning run to an ongoing commitment to the safety and well-being of the town he had come to care deeply about. Emma's parents approached, their eyes reflecting gratitude and relief. "Jake, we can't thank you enough," her mother said softly. "You saved our daughter and so much more." Jake nodded, his gaze drifting back to Emma and Max. It was a team effort. Emma's courage and Max's instincts made all the difference. Inside the house, the atmosphere was warm and inviting. Family photos lined the walls, capturing moments of happiness and togetherness. Emma sat at the kitchen table, a book open before her, but her attention on Max, who rested his head on her lap. Their bond was unbreakable, forged through hardship and strengthened by love. Jake joined them, pulling up a chair. "How's school going?" he asked, his voice gentle. Emma looked up, a spark of determination in her eyes. "Good. I'm learning a lot, and I want to help others, like you helped me." Jake smiled, nodding approvingly. That's the spirit. It's important to give back. Outside, the community was coming together in new ways. Neighborhood watch programs had been established, local authorities worked closely with residents, and education campaigns raised awareness about safety and vigilance. The story of Emma and Max had inspired a movement, a collective resolve to protect and support one another. At a community center event, Jake spoke to a group of children and parents, sharing lessons about courage, responsibility, and the importance of standing up against injustice. Max lay quietly at his feet, occasionally lifting his head to observe the attentive faces. Emma sat among the children, her eyes shining with pride. She knew her experience had changed her, shaping her into someone who would always stand for what was right. As the day turned to evening, Jake and Emma walked along the peaceful lake shore, the water reflecting the soft hues of the setting sun. The tranquility of the moment was a balm to the wounds of the past. "Thank you, Jake," Emma said quietly, "for everything." Jake looked down at her, his expression sincere. "You don't have to thank me. You were brave. That's what matters." Max trotted ahead, his tail wagging, embodying the spirit of protection and resilience that had carried them all through the darkest times. Together, they stood by the water's edge, a silent promise passing between them. A commitment to uphold their values, support their community, and face whatever challenges lay ahead with courage and hope. In Silver Pines, life had returned to its gentle rhythm. But the story of a girl, her dog, and a Navy SEAL remained etched in the hearts of all who knew them, a testament to the unbreakable bonds forged in adversity and the enduring power of trust and love.